Hello, and welcome to Creepycore and Folklore, the show about creatures, encounters, old tales, and myths. I'm your host, Iona Wayland, a dark fantasy author, mental health professional, and overall curious person. I want to join other spooky souls and hear about these unusual stories. Hello, spooky soul. Welcome. It has recently come to my attention that I have not dedicated an episode to horses, which is baffling to me since I feel like I talk about horses at some point in every single episode. I'm being facetious, but I talk about them a lot. And if you don't already know, I have two horses of my own, technically one pony, one draft horse. There's Orion, who is a rescue pony. He's a type of Appaloosa where he's bay coated and has spots on his butt. It's very cute. And then we've got Anastasia, which we call Anna, and she's an old retired plow horse. Now we just trail ride the both of them from time to time. But she is a flea-bitten gray is the color. So basically she's this gorgeous giant white fairy horse who's just like super strong and really stubborn. But very sweet, gentle giants are what Percherons are known for. That's the breed. But she has these teeny tiny gray spots all over her that are like teensy tiny. And those are what are called the flea bitten coat pattern, just to give you a visual. But I think it's really interesting that I have yet to have covered just horse themes or horse related creatures in a dedicated episode. So I have actually covered horses a lot over the time, and the ones that I have covered, I'll list them out with a brief description in the episodes that they're mentioned in, so that if you're interested to know more or refresh yourself, you can listen to those episodes. So here are the ones I've already covered. There's Sleipnir, which in Norse mythology, Sleipnir is the 8-legged horse ridden by the god Odin. It's considered the fastest and most powerful horse in the world and plays a crucial role in various Norse tales, and that is in the episode Father Folklore. Next is the Wild Hunt. In European folklore, it's this spectral group of hunters that's led by a supernatural figure. It's associated with a deity or mythical figure, but horses play a significant role in the myth because these spectral or mythical riders will be seen galloping across the sky during the storms or at night. And this is in the episode Winter Folklore Part 2. And the next one is the Headless Horseman. This was popularized by Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And this is a headless horseman that is a ghostly figure riding a horse, often associated with haunting and terror. It's actually related it actually originated from Celtic lore of the Dullahan, and that is in the episode Dark Horse, where I talk about pukas, and they can shapeshift into a dark horse at times too. So that's an added one if you want to check out that episode. But if I didn't dedicate an episode strictly to horses, I would be doing Anna, the rescue Percheron, and the gentle, beautiful soul who loves taking naps, and Orion, the asshole of a rescue Appaloosa pony, a disservice. Also, I want to do this in honor of Speck, the leopard Appaloosa I barrel raced on and did rodeos with. We sure had a lot of adventures, and I miss him a lot. May he rest in peace. And of course, Phoenix, who is very much alive. He's a quarter horse paint I raised since he was literally born. That's a whole other story because I owned his mom and she had him and then she died a couple weeks later. I still want to dedicate a whole book to Bar. Her name was Barley. But he's retired now because he's permanently lame. It was just a weird thing that can happen sometimes with horses. So he gets to be retired at my family's farm now and he's like living it up. But let's dive into different horse-like creatures and their stories. First up, we've got Pegasus, and Pegasus is from Greek mythology. Pegasus is a winged horse that was born from the blood of the decapitated Medusa. I did not know about this at all. Like, there are some stories in mythology that I'm like, wow, I knew that, or oh wow, I love re-looking at this. And Greek mythology is one of those that I'm like, what? I didn't know that was connected at all. So it's this majestic creature that's associated with poetry, inspiration, and the muses. It's just this legendary winged horse that appears in a lot of folklore and literature now, and back then in ancient Greek times. It's also depicted as a loyal companion to heroes and gods and will carry them swiftly across the skies. And it's supposed to represent the power of imagination, the transcendent nature of art. It's this embodiment of spirit, freedom, beauty, and limitless possibilities that lie beyond the realm of just an earthbound horse. Next up, we have a Kelpie. I may or may not have a very prominent companion that's a Kelpie in my book Ashes. Check it out if you're interested in dark fantasy. Kelpies are from Scottish folklore, and it's this like water spirit that often takes the form of a horse and shapeshifts into a horse, or some tellings say that it's always in horse form, but a lot of it says that it's like the spirit of the water that'll kind of condense into a horse. And that's really interesting to me, of like, oh, it doesn't really have a form, but when it does take it's more of a liquid. And then whenever it condenses, it creates something. I think that is something that I also have quite a bit in my book. But they're said to lure travelers to try and hop on its back or try and pet them, and then it'll drag them underwater and drown them. It specifically targets children. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think that children have the most difficult time in old-timey tales. Children and women and children for sure. I mean, everyone has a harrowing tale to tell if they're in any kind of folklore or fairy tale, but like, God, everyone wants to like eat, kidnap, or like murder children, and I have no idea why. The other forms that a Kelpie can take is the form of a handsome young man or a seemingly harmless pony. And just so you know, which you probably already know this, but just in case you don't, a pony is an equine, which is what all horses are, equines. Kind of like all dogs or dog creatures are canine. So a shorter in stature equine is a pony, and a taller in stature equine is a horse. And I think it's like 14.2 hands and above, which is the measurement for horses, is considered a horse. And there's weirdly like sometimes in-betweeners that I would jokingly call porse, but just depending on how you want to classify them, how you feel like it that day, I guess you can just call them a horse or a pony. But a lot of people think that baby horses are called ponies, and baby horses are called foals, which are newborns. And then if they're a boy, they're called a colt. And if they're a girl, they're called a filly. And then they're called yearlings when they're about a year old, or as they start getting weaned from their mamas. And then after that, they around the age of like usually you try and go for older than that. But you can't start training horses. People think that you can just like hop on a horse whenever they're like a year old or just babies or something. It's like you have to wait for their like knees to close up. I'm getting like way off on a tangent. There's a whole thing about how their knees need to close up, and you can tell if they can stand up to sleep. Man, maybe this is why I haven't done an episode on horses yet. Now I know why. At first I was like, why haven't I? Now I know why. Now you know why. Okay, going back to Kelpies. but they're said to represent like treachery and danger, kind of like that wolf in sheep's clothing kind of look. They're this like cautionary tale that comes from like beauty and alluring, and lust, or wanting to tame the natural world that isn't meant to be tamed. Next up, we have the unicorn, or as some children call it, the unicron, which I always think is adorable. Or even more adorable is if they can't say their R's, and so they'll say unicorn or unicorn. Oh, I can't. Children are the cutest. But the unicorn is this majestic looking horse with a single horn coming out of his forehead. And it symbolizes, which is very interesting to me, purity, grace, and untamed beauty. And this is kind of a consistent symbol across the world and in different cultures. It's so interesting where it's like this lustfulness, whereas the Kelpie was like a creature that can hold their own, so to speak, and tries to like prey upon you, or will give it back to you if you try and get to them. The unicorn is often, at least what I've read about, like kind of this fragility of nature, and how if you try like this, it's like don't corrupt it, like warning against corrupting purity. For instance, there are lots of legends and stories that say that only the purest individual can approach or capture a unicorn. And it's like, it kind of highlights the virtues of innocence, healing, and divine power. You see them in lots of tales of knights, enchantment, and they're still really, really popular today. It's really cool to see how many people are so into the unicorn. Actually, whenever I was talking to our family friend and nanny about what I should cover, her answer every time, she's like, oh, okay, go have fun. I'm working on, your podcast. And I'm like, wow, thanks. And then sometimes I'm stumped. I'm like, I don't know what to cover. And every single time she's like, the unicorn. So here it is. But I think they're just beautiful. I already like how varied interpretations of horses can be. Next up, we have Chang'e Moon Palace, which is Chinese mythology. I had never heard of her, and I was like, oh my gosh, where has she been all my life? Like I really wanted to. It's just a gorgeous story. Get ready for this. So the Moon Palace is this space where the lunar deity Chang'e resides, and she's often depicted riding a white horse that symbolizes the beauty and tranquility associated with the moon. So, according to legend, Chang'e was the wife of the legendary archer He Yi, which for Chang'e, I was able to find like actual pronunciation guides, but for He Yi, sorry. For once, the husband is the one that isn't highlighted, I guess. So I'm sorry, He Yi. But when He Yi obtained an elixir of immortality, Chang'e consumed it to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. And because she did this with purity of heart and with the intention of protection, she ascended to the moon, which was considered the closest planet to the earth, from ancient Chinese culture. Chang'e is depicted as a graceful and ethereal figure, and she often has a jade rabbit. I have goosebumps right now talking about her. I really like this story, clearly. She's revered as the moon goddess and is associated with themes of beauty and femininity and eternal love. And the Mid-Autumn Festival is celebrated in honor of Chang'e, where families will gather to appreciate the moon and offer sacrifices and share moon cakes. But the story of Chang'e serves as this immortal, loving, sacrificial, and beautiful tale of the moon goddess. So next one, I know I've seen written like this wording written, but for the life of me, I can't find the pronunciation guide for Kuda Lumping, or maybe it's I've seen it. It looks like lumping things together. But I've also seen kuda kepang. So I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Please bear with me here. I'm really sorry that I can't find a pronunciation guide for it. But it's in Havanese and Indonesian folklore, and kuda lumping is a traditional dance that's performed by these dancers that are riding these woven horse-shaped props. It's believed that it possesses supernatural and protective powers. So these dancers will ride on these woven horses that are usually made from bamboo or rattan, and the performers mimic the movements of horses. Horses move in different gaits. Those are kind of like, I drive a stick shift and I've always driven a stick shift. So for me, it's like a different gear, like the horse kicks it into next gear, and it's a completely different way they move their legs and their muscles. But these gaits include walking, trotting, cantering, or loping, depending if you ride English or Western, or maybe in other ways of riding. They call it different things. And then there's galloping and running. And the things I read about kuda lumping, they typically will mimic trotting or galloping, though that's kind of like the second slowest and the fastest gait, but they do so in this synchronized formation. And it's believed that during this dance, the dancers are possessed by spirits of mystical forces, and they exhibit supernatural abilities such as biting and eating glass. They'll swallow fire, or they'll trample over hot coals without any harm coming to them. And it's not just a form of entertainment, because a lot of people go to it and celebrate it and watch these performers and these spiritual leaders, but it also holds a ton of significance and history behind it. And it's believed to possess protective powers that will ward off evil spirits and bring good fortune. It's this vibrant and gorgeous display of culture, spirituality, and deep-rooted beliefs and traditions of the Havanese and Indonesian people. Next up, we have Epona. This is from Celtic mythology, but of course, I immediately think of any Zelda game that ever there was in Link's horse Epona. But Epona is the goddess associated with horses, fertility, and protection. And she's depicted as a woman riding a horse, accompanied by a whole herd of other horses, which is probably the most badass visual I can come up with. And as someone who grew up with horses and like helping with rescue teams and trainings and things like that, it's so funny because whenever I was really little, I could just like kind of run up and hop onto one, which is ill-advised and not safe. And sometimes there would be like a stampede, or all the basically the whole herd would get the zoomies, and I would just be clutching onto this untacked, which means there's no leather bound anything or metal bound anything on the horse. Like, it's just me completely bareback on this horse, no reins, no saddle, no nothing, and everybody takes off, and I'm like, well, I better not fall off or I will die. So it's really cool to know that Epona is a goddess that does something similar, but she is immortal, so that's a little bit different. But ancient Celtic tribes would depict Epona as the symbol of nurturance and life-giving qualities of horses, and considered a guardian deity of domesticated animals and the natural world. So I think that's really cool because, like, honestly, the more I learn about this particular deity, I really feel connected to her, because I feel like that if I could pick to be a god, that would be the god I'd be. She's associated with abundance and prosperity and embodying bountiful harvests and blessing the earth. And in Celtic culture, she was revered as a protector of travelers as well. She could ensure safe journeys and provide guidance in times of need, like if people are lost. And it really like reflects this deep connection that humans have with horses and nature in general. And this ancient worship recognizes the importance of horses as like a vital and cherished animal in Celtic society. Next up, we have Cholima. This is a mythical winged horse from East Asian folklore. specifically in Korean and Chinese traditions. And it's known for its incredible speeds and diligence and perseverance. And it's supposed to symbolize progress and hard work. It's known as the 1,000 Li horse. And Li in Mandarin, and I know I'm not doing the tone correctly at all in this one. I was so excited about Chang'e that I cannot find anything about Cholima. But Li is said to signify a quote, very great length. So I guess a really rough translation would be like the 1,000 mile horse or the 1,000 kilometer horse. But it's kind of like the whole 40 days and 40 nights doesn't actually mean literally. It's kind of like it took a really long time. Just like Cholima was able to travel these great distances and have these extraordinary speed and endurance to be able to cover these vast distances in just a very short amount of time. So in Korean culture specifically, it's a symbol of progress and perseverance and the vigilant spirit of the Korean people. It also serves as an inspirational metaphor for overcoming challenges and great achievements. The image of Cholima, which was interesting to me because whenever I looked it up, I was able to see that Cholima is like the imagery I've seen before. It's used in art, literature, and propaganda, apparently, and it represents the ambitious drive for advancement. And the legend of this untamable and driven horse is this powerful symbol of hope and motivation and pursuit of excellence. Next up, there's Karkadon. And again, that one is one that I cannot find a pronunciation guide on. And I was so pleased with a Chinese master on the channel on YouTube that gave the example and the tone for Chang'e, but I now wish that I had someone telling me how to say each of these, because it seems like it's just really hard to find consistent pronunciation of something. I don't want to say it wrong, but thank you for bearing with me anyway. But the Karkadon is a Persian and Arabic mythology that's a legendary creature that looks like a lot of places, a lot of articles described it as a one-horned horse or rhinoceros. I think it looks kind of like a hyena, which with more of like body with more of a horse face, and then a rhino horn on the nose, basically. Just like a horn on the nose, but it's known for its ferocity, and it's depicted as a fierce guardian of hidden treasure, which is my favorite thing to read about. Oh, I love reading and writing about secret treasures. But in West Asian folklore, the Karkadon is a mythical creature known for fierce, intimidating nature. It's this massive rhinoceros-like creature, and it possesses that single horn, either on its forehead or on its nose. I've seen both. And it's just this very aggressive and solitary beast that lives in these very remote and desolate areas. And the horn is said to possess powerful properties that can neutralize poisons and protect against evil forces. So it has these supernatural protections, or these spiritual protections. And despite how ferocious it can be, it's also associated with nobility and strength. And it is associated with power and resilience as well as ferocity. It's kind of this protective, proud figure in mythology. And of course, last but not least, the centaur. I spent literal years of my life pretending I was a centaur, and is it cringy? Yes. Did I play centaur for a little longer than the typical child? Yes. But that's little me out there galloping around. And now that I'm a bit older and wiser, I say you do you, kid, little me, little dude. You'll write books about it one day. More fodder for the imagination, I guess. But the actual centaur is a creature from Greek mythology, which I did not know until researching this. It has the upper body of a human, like the torso, shoulders, and head, and the lower body of a horse. But it's basically the withers or the shoulders and all four legs and tail of a horse. They're shown as being like wide and really skilled in various arts. And these can be like archery, or they could be weaving. There's all sorts of artistic capabilities and skills that they have, but they're also considered very fierce warriors. They have these like, it's kind of like the Carcadon, where they're both noble yet ferocious at the same time, or protective. You wouldn't want to cross them. And it has this duality to their nature. Some are depicted as wise and knowledgeable. Others are notorious for violence and unruly behavior. And it's kind of like this symbol of primal and instinctual aspects of humanity, and kind of this struggle between civilization and untamed wilderness, kind of like the Kelpie and kind of like the unicorn too. And this hybrid form kind of represents the connection between humans and animals, and it bridges the gap between like our world and the natural world, because we are a part of nature. But these are all just a few examples of horse-related folklore from different cultures. Each tale has its own unique symbolism and significance and legends and lore related to each one, not only like across the world, but also locally. And it kind of shows this like fascination and enduring storytelling that is all inspired by horses and the human connection to horses. You gotta love our beautiful and majestic and mysterious equine friends. So thank you for listening to me blab about horses, and go off on tangents about folklore per usual, and I will talk to you next week. Thanks to all you spooky souls out there for listening to Creepycore and Folklore. Follow on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok if you're looking for more uncanny content. If you have your own tales to tell, you can email creepycoreandfolklore@gmail.com. If you liked this, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, or tell a friend who might enjoy these stories to spread the word. If you're interested in dark fantasy, check out my Hollowverse series. Ashes is available now in paperback and ebook on Amazon and audiobook on Audible, and the sequel is underway. I'm Iona Wayland, and I'll see you next time.